Good morning, Matt.
Good morning, Bill. Welcome back to the DMZ.
It's so cozy in the DMZ.
It's warm and there's a caramelly center here. I have to say, the DMZ. We liked the name of the DMZ, but the more we have it, the happier I am with it. The name's really grown on me. And also, if you go to Blogging Heads, it's at the top. It's the first. Alphabetically, it's the first show listed. I think, and it's short. I think we had a home run with the name.
We don't have a theme song yet, though. We need some sort of theme song.
We need a theme song, absolutely.
I try to find a way to kind of layer it on top of the recording, so it just all be seamless.
I think it would be very nice if we put a little bit of thought into aesthetics and music as well. So, and I'm all for the 1980s sort of TV show theme song. So I think it should be really cheesy.
That's a big pet peeve of mine, that there are no more TV show theme songs.
Yeah. They were great, You take the good, you take the bad, you take the... I mean, how do you beat that?
That's what I sing to my children.
Yeah.
When I'm trying to get them to sleep. I sing Facts of Life, I sing WKRP, and I sing Different Strokes.
Also, the Fall Guy, I think, an underrated... and I believe sang by the Stars. Sometimes the Stars, like, did Alan Thicke sing the Growing Pains theme, or was that B.J. Thomas? I'm not sure.
I thought Alan Thicke sang the Facts of Life.
Oh my God! Now you just blown my mind there. If that happened, but I'm not sure if we should sing our theme or if we should try to farm it out. So if any of our viewers are professional musicians, wouldn't it be cool if they were to go into the studio and record a DMZ song? And we had a little contest.
I'm happy to take listener contributions.
That would be very
contest.
Cool. This is our pirate ship here, and you're all on board. Although please don't say anything bad in the comments or have any dissenting opinions. But otherwise, we all own this show. This isn't just our Bill and Matt's show.
Well, I think it's going to be harder and harder to maintain the collegial tenor of the DMZ now that the general election campaign is upon us. We've been able to get away with focusing on intra-party warfare, which is a little bit easier, perhaps.
Were we doing
maintain collegiality?
Did we do the weekend blog in 2008 during the presidential race, or did that start after?
I think I was with Khan back then, and it was not the DMZ when I was doing it with Khan.
But we did. I mean, you and I did obviously go through the 2010 election cycle. So
yes,
and we managed to do that in a very DMZ flavored way. So it's not impossible.
This is a stiffer test.
Yeah, this is going to be the test of whether or not the fabric of the show holds. But on the other hand, it's going to be Romney versus Obama, and so I think we'll muddle through.
So Santorum made the big news this week by dropping out, and I got to say, I'm sort of bemused by all the analysis about why did he drop out. I feel like he dropped out because he lost. he lost a while ago, and he's now acknowledging it. That doesn't strike me as being all that hard to tease out.
Well, I don't know, though, Bill. I mean, look, losing doesn't necessarily equate to dropping out. If it did, Newt Gingrich would have gotten out when I said he should.
But to your point, he should have dropped out by now.
No, he should have, and I think that he's paying for it in terms of his reputation. I mean, the thing to do, and really not just in politics but in life, is at some point you declare victory. But as George H.W. Bush recently said, and of course the great Kenny Rogers coined the term, you got to know when to hold them and know when to fold them. Seinfeld ended his show on top. You got to know when to get off the stage, and Santorum actually did that. I think he did it in time.
Just barely.
Yeah, and Gingrich did not do that.
Right. I mean, obviously Santorum wanted, I think, to go out with a win in his home state and try to shake off the reputation of having lost his home state by double digits when he was running for senator. And I presume realizing that was not going to happen, having 2 losses from your home state,
not good. But
would
now
not be a way to end.
The fact that he got out, I do think that he has rehabilitated his image, and he will be mentioned, despite he will be considered for a speaking role at the convention. He will be considered for some sort of post in the administration. And if Romney were to win, and if Romney loses, he would be now. Look, it's going to be stiff competition, and it's a strong field in 2016. But you have to say Santorum's earned his way into that list.
Rehabilitated with who? I mean, you could argue, I guess, that he is now, in the top 5 social conservative leaders again. But he's not rehabilitated in any kind of way that suggests he's a plausible national candidate. He showed no ability to appeal to anything outside of his very thin ideological demographic.
He won. First of all, he won 11 states. That's nothing to sneeze at. Second of all, the Republican Party, as you know, Bill, has a habit of nominating the next guy in line. And Reagan. Is
he the next guy now? Is he really the next guy?
Well, I think there's an argument to be made. He now has to make that argument. But look, Reagan lost in '76, McCain lost in 2000, Romney lost in 2008. So it's not absurd to think that losing this time around is not only not fatal, but is in fact a selling point for him to be the nominee next time.
But I feel Santorum's loss here is more analogous to Huckabee's loss. He was someone who could win amongst the social conservatives, but couldn't really get out beyond that. And Huckabee, I thought, ran a more respectable campaign than Santorum did. I mean, I don't feel Santorum. The states that he won were less, wow, Santorum's awesome. It was more, oh my God, I hate Mitt Romney.
Yeah.
So does that really argue that he has found a way to bring his political career back and show that he's got political potency again?
Well, look, that is that he is going to have to make that argument, and you make some valid points, and I think that it depends on how the history is written, and frankly what he does between now and then to make the case. I do think that Santorum has the potential to have a powerful message, which is to combine the populist angst with a more hopeful, transcendent, compassionate conservative message, a message that says, no, we are not libertarians. We are not the party that turns its back on culture and all this other stuff. We believe in big things. This is the party that ended slavery. I mean, so I think that he could have cobbled together a very compelling message, and at times he stumbled upon it and hit upon it, but he never reinforced that message and never.
Well, that's why I think that's why I think it's sort of more telling here. I mean, again, analogous to Huckabee, when Huckabee had his moment, he won Iowa, all of a sudden all the national media would start taking him seriously. If memory serves, he then made this big, foreign policy gaffe, which should expose his lack of knowledge in the area. And then all of a sudden, he was a caricature again. And Santorum, he didn't make a gaffe on policy knowledge so much, but after his wins, he would, instead of driving a message and driving an overarching theme that would have resonance beyond his natural base, he would always go to some sort of poorly arranged town hall event and take whatever bait a liberal heckler put in front of him.
Yeah.
And it never gave the sense of this guy is really seriously trying to be seen as a plausible national figure. It just seems to be a guy who wants to harp on ideological grievances.
No, I completely agree with you, and I think that that is a missed opportunity. I mean, on one hand, you have to look at this campaign and say, wow, it's impressive. This guy was a nobody. He lost his re-election in 2006 by 18 points. He was polling in the single digits as recently as December of 2011, and yet he manages to become the anti-Romney to win 11 states. So on one hand, you say, wow, that's impressive, and he really did a lot with very little money, very little resources. On the other hand, you say, well, what if? I mean, what if after Iowa he had honed in on a very tightly crafted message that, again, I think appealed simultaneously to folks in Rust Belt states, a very populist, reinforcing his plan to favor American manufacturing, and simultaneously had a very transcendent, optimistic message saying that, it's not about having no government, it's about having a good government, it's about having a moral government, and we can still do great things in this country. Look, I'm not saying that appeals to me, but I think that there is in this country a lot of people, in the middle of this country especially, geographically, who've been left behind. I think a lot of them are, Christians, and they're socially conservative, but they also have been through very hard times, and they think that, look, government has a role to play. So I think that there's a huge niche that could and should be Santorum voters, but he didn't capitalize on it.
I mean, I totally agree with that. I think it would be very interesting, at minimum, to see that hypothesis be tested, and to see a conservative try to revamp the ideology and make it more relevant to today's problems and distance itself from, Bush-style conservatism. But by the same time, I don't think you necessarily would have had to be all that daring to have beaten Romney in this Republican primary. I think a minimally politically competent regular conservative should have been able to beat Mitt Romney in this Republican Party. And it seems like the voters were craving that, and they gave every two-bit hack the chance to show that perhaps they might be that person.
Yeah, well,
and everyone fell short.
You make a good point, and I will say this, by the way, not only do I think that the message that I was just describing, not only do I think there's a hunger in the heartland, and by the way, Reagan had very much a populist streak. Not only do I believe there's a hunger in the heartland for this sort of conservatism, but I also believe it would have been a stark contrast to Mitt Romney and his image as a rich guy who's more of a technocrat. So I think it could have been very, very powerful. The problem I have with what you just said, though, Bill, is that it doesn't really matter if people like Romney, because all he had to do was destroy his opponents. And that's what he did, outspending them, using his financial resources and his organization and his operation. He systematically went through and destroyed each of them, including Rick Santorum. I think he would have beaten Rick Santorum in Pennsylvania by out-campaigning him and out-negative, adding him.
Well, the one exception is Rick Perry. Rick Perry wasn't outspent by Romney. Rick Perry shot himself in the face.
Yeah.
And Rick Perry was bringing in the money up front.
Yeah.
I mean,
$18 million, I think, right away, right? Something like
that. And if he was competent enough on the national stage, he would have had the money to not be overwhelmed by the Romney machine.
That's a good point. Now, he also faced, I mean, you're totally right, Perry, his biggest problem was himself. But the other thing he faced was that everybody was vying to be the anti-Romney. And so everybody, Rick Perry became the target. He took arrows from Kane and Bachmann and everybody else, and they sort of gave Romney a pass. So that's the caveat as well.
Fair enough. So here we are. It's Obama v. Romney. Last week we talked about that likely prospect, and we tried to tease out what would a Romney campaign look like. And in the interest of fair play, excuse my phone back there. It's probably actually the answer is going to kick on. It's going to make a lot of noise. Perhaps I should take a break and let that play through.
Okay. I'm not hearing much. Just want to kind of keep talking.
Are you not hearing? Okay, then I'll just keep going.
Okay.
So if we asked last week what kind of campaign Romney's going to run, in the interest of fair play, what kind of campaign is Obama going to run? I suggested last week it's going to be a big ideas campaign. It's not going to be a low road campaign. But there are people who are saying the opposite. You and I had a little Twitter back and forth about it.
Yeah, I think you're overly optimistic.
Because the RNC has is it just a web ad or is it a TV ad too?
I think. Well, I don't know. I don't know, so I don't want to say.
It's at least the web ad where they're accusing Obama of hypocrisy and largely taking quotes of his where he's saying that campaign should be run in kind of a high-minded way, and then picking out clips of mostly commentators suggesting Obama is going to do more low-road types of political tactics. You have David Axelrod was on MSNBC's Morning Joe this week, and he was getting kind of leaned on. Why do you keep bringing up Mitt Romney's dog Seamus and being tied to the roof? Why are you mocking Mitt Romney for saying that the budget is marvelous? And Axelrod, was still insisting it was going to be, a high road campaign. So, as I said to you, Matt, on Twitter, I'm not suggesting the Obama campaign doesn't know how to throw elbows. They do, and that's not new. They got hit with these types of hypocrisy charges in 2008. They ran against Hillary as being cold and calculating. They ran against McCain as being erratic. So I'm not suggesting that they don't know how to be tough, but I don't think that the entirety of the campaign, or even the majority of the campaign, is going to be premised on just tearing down the other guy. There are plenty of other things that the Obama campaign is doing that are about ideas, that are about past accomplishments, that are about future goals, that are about our vision for America. And I think what's sort of interesting about the Obama campaign is there's always been an internal friction amongst Democrats. Should you run nice goody-goody campaigns, or should you be as nasty as the other guy? After Carter and Mondale and Dukakis, especially after Dukakis made a point of saying, I'm not going to respond to these attacks against me. I'm not going to respond to them tearing me down. I think the people will see through that, and that proved to be completely untrue. And so ever since then, it's always been a question, can Democrats pick somebody who's going to be tough enough? And even when Tsongas was high up in '92, he was being asked that question, and Tsongas would say, "I'm a counterpuncher. I'm not going to hit first, but I'll hit back." And Clinton, of course, didn't run a goody-goody campaign, and so with Obama, I think he has been he has successfully balanced the idea of more high-minded politics and doing enough on that score to make the case that he is, without sacrificing, the necessity to deal with human nature, and not let opportunities to ding the other guy, go unexploited. But it does lead him to the potential problem where the media is going to call him, and no matter how small the elbow is, it's going to get magnified. And so even the suggestion you're going to run a high-minded campaign leads you open to the charge,
right.
And you run the risk of any little thing that you do overshadowing other high-minded stuff you have in store. So we'll see if they can keep walking the line. They have so far, not just this campaign but the previous one, but obviously the Republican Party is going to try to make it hard for them to hit Romney in that way.
Yeah, I mean, the problem is, you can't have it both ways. You can't position yourself as this forward-looking, optimistic uniter, and then run a campaign which, at the substantive level, seeks to drive a wedge between women and men and Hispanics and Republicans, and at the superficial level, make fun of Mitt Romney for wearing skinny jeans and Seamus and all sorts of silly things. So you can't have it both ways. And I think that's what Obama has been getting away with, is essentially being, I would say...
Well, if he's getting away with it, then you can't have it both ways, can't you?
Well, I think he has by and large, gotten away with it. I think finally, at least the RNC is calling him on it. Let's see if the mainstream media follows suit. You mentioned the Morning Joe thing. That's one example. but there's a lot of campaign left to be had. But I would say that Obama hasn't just been counterpunching, or he hasn't just sort of been a little bit negative because you have to be in a tough political environment. I would say that he is hyper negative and hyper political, and that they've been able to simultaneously be very divisive and negative, and really kind of try to run a wedge campaign, but yet portray themselves as hope and change and optimism. So I think finally they're being caught on it, and we'll see if it sticks.
Do you think the Obama campaign is doing anything different than what the Romney campaign is doing, or what the Bush campaigns did, or the McCain campaign did before? Or is it just that Obama's held up a higher standard for himself, therefore he should be held to a higher standard?
Mostly I think that it's the latter. Mostly I think that that politics is dirty, and that campaigns are tough, but the difference is that Obama has gotten the benefit of trying to portray himself as a post-partisan new kind of politician. And in fact, he's quite good at going negative, and they're quite adept at being playing small ball. It's just not grand ideas. It's skinny jeans and Seamus. So
well, again, I don't think it's quite the either or. I mean, I think there is an understanding amongst political professionals that there are two things that have to go into somebody's vote, if that much. One is where do you stand on things? What are your issue positions? And the other is, what's your perception of the candidate's character? Do you trust that person? Do you think that person gets you, or gets what's going on with the country? When the Bush campaign ran against Al Gore as a serial exaggerator, that was a way to try to undercut the guy's personal credibility no matter what he said.
Right.
And I think what the Obama campaign is trying to do is to do both things. I don't think that there may be a tension between the two, but I don't think they're necessarily contradictory. I think the Obama campaign has very clearly staked out a lot of bold positions that they are running on, not just for the future, but what they have done. They didn't govern in the first term in a small ball way. They put their necks out there on the Recovery Act, on health care, on Don't Ask, Don't Tell, not just the issues that haven't even been fully tackled yet, like clean energy and like immigration. There's plenty of issue targets for the other side to take on if they so choose. It's not, to quote Obama, he's not hiding the ball. But at the same time, they want to say that Obama's a good guy, Mitt Romney's a bad guy, and they're trying to play up certain aspects of his personal bio to suggest, hey, maybe this guy is out of touch and doesn't get what you're going through, and so when he attacks me, you shouldn't trust what he says.
And you said the out of touch thing, and that reminds me of a Politico story from about a year ago, where they said, according to our sources within the Obama campaign, the goal is going to be to portray Mitt Romney as being weird. They make fun of the word, marvelous, his use of the word marvelous. There is an attempt to portray him as weird. I think there's going to be, at least, whether it's probably not directly from the campaign, but an attempt to play the Mormon card, I would say.
I don't think they're going down that road at all. I mean, the marvelous line has nothing to do with the guy's religion. It has to do with this sense of connection with regular Americans.
Right. No, I mean that he's a little bit different, and that he's weird, and that he's not like you, because you don't say marvelous. Although I would say, what about marvelous Marvin Hagler? Whatever happened to that? There's a marvelous market right around here, so it's not like it's not that weird of a word. But look, it is an effort to portray Mitt Romney as being weird and different. And look, that's not hope and change. That's not optimistic. That's not big ideas. And the other thing too, Bill, and we can talk about this all day, but this goes back to something that I haven't said for a couple years, but I know you and I talked about, years ago, was that I've always believed that Obama had a huge chance to actually become this post-partisan leader, and it would have really screwed over the Republican Party and the conservative movement. That he could have essentially triangulated, and not as a re-election gimmick, but as a new political paradigm, which would have potentially repositioned everything. And he just immediately chose not to do that. He chose to spend a couple years and all of his political capital, ramming this socialized health care down our throats, which very well, as far as we know, might be overturned a couple months from now by the Supreme Court. That's what he chose to do with his political capital. And so I think it's a huge missed opportunity, and I think to me it speaks to the bill of goods that we were sold in '08. Well, I never bought it, but a lot of even conservatives did. David Brooks is a classic example.
I think it's an unfair charge because let's look at healthcare. I mean, there's an example where Obama, he did not pursue socialized medicine. He did not pursue single payer. He did not propose increased government bureaucracy. He said, let's find a way to do this within as much as we can through the private health insurance market. And in fact, I will drop my opposition to the individual mandate and take this idea that originated with the Heritage Foundation if it's going to diffuse opposition from the insurance industry itself. It was a direct compromise with corporations. It's the exact opposite of trying to do something that's socialized. And I think one of the interesting subtext to what the Supreme Court might do, if you look at, I think it's Brett Kavanaugh, who's one of the lower court justices, who was a former Quayle aide. He had said in one of his opinions, you don't want to overrule this because there's other ideas for privatization out there that may have policy merit that Congress should have the opportunity to pursue that you would cut off if you say you can never compel individual citizens from buying things in the private sector. So that would negate. I'll finish one point. That would negate the Social Security privatization ideas of the right. It would negate Medicare vouchers. You would not be able to do those things if you can't have an individual mandate like this under the Constitution. So here's Obama trying to meet folks halfway. Even at one point said, hey, I'll do tort reform if you want me to, if you'll get some Republican votes on this thing. So he was trying to do those sorts of things, and I don't think the Republican Party was very interested in meeting him halfway.
Well, look, we could debate the merits of Obamacare, but the fundamental question is, why do it? He came into office with the economy struggling. Did he focus on jobs? Did he the over 8% unemployment rate? Did he focus on issues which I would say are low-hanging fruit, where we could have had some victories, some bipartisan? No, he immediately shifted to one of the most controversial and divisive issues he could have possibly done, and expended all of this political capital on something that we saw this play out with Hillary Care in the 90s. This was a hot button, spark. He immediately went to something that was divisive as opposed to things that could have brought people together. And I think it's a huge missed opportunity for him. I mean, for conservatism, you should probably be happy that he did that. But I think he could have really, really rearranged the political the pieces on the board, and I think it's a missed opportunity for him.
Well, I mean, there are folks on the left that criticize Obama for making that issue of prioritization too. I mean, there are folks who have said you should have just stayed on jobs, should have just kept doing more things on jobs, should have built on the Recovery Act and just done nothing but that going forward, because going on healthcare had a lot of political risks that you didn't have to take on in your first term. The environmentalist community was upset that he deprioritized cap and trade in favor of healthcare. They think that's the more pressing issue. So I don't think his choice for doing that is necessarily about trying to just be ideological and divisive, although I think it's more an acceptance that, look, if you're going to take on big ideas, if you're going to try to solve problems, you're going to get people mad at you because there's rarely obvious consensus on how to solve big problems. But I think he very much tried to do it in a way. I mean, I think he very much wants to be that post-partisan figure. He very much tried to rearrange the pieces on the chessboard. They spent several months desperately trying to get Republican support for the thing. They didn't want to do it on a party line vote if they didn't have to. And I think he's probably greatly disappointed that in pursuing this issue that he was not able to rearrange the piece on the chessboard the way you laid out. I don't think it was a decision to not do that. I think he tried to do it on that type of issue, and that respect came up short.
Well, I think a really gutsy thing would have been to take the recommendation for entitlement reform and to make that a priority, as opposed to kind of inventing something. I mean, maybe address the people who are uninsured, as opposed to re-engineering, a third of the U.S. economy or whatever.
But there is Medicare reform in the bill. I mean, you could not like it, but I mean, he's getting hit from the Republicans for a, quote, $500 billion cut of Medicare, which is an attempt to reform an entitlement program. It's an attempt to try to find cost savings in the program.
The Simpson-Bowles plan. I mean, to me, that's something. Like, let's say he had put as much energy into pushing the Simpson-Bowles plan and bringing in Republicans to push it. That would have been devastating for the Republican Party. You would have had.
Well, but I mean, there's subjective debate here on did he do that or not. Obviously, he didn't embrace Simpson-Bowles in full and then go on a 50-state tour stumping for it. Instead, he said he agreed with it in part, disagreed with it in part, wants to do something along the same lines, and tried privately to negotiate a type of deal along those lines with Boehner. And there's obviously a lot of recriminations, who walked away from the table, and there's been some news coverage around that lately. And so you could certainly argue that he didn't try hard enough, he didn't concede but I don't think it's fair to say he didn't try at all. I mean, he clearly tried. And he's even saying right now that he wants to do something like that, but it's going to require having Republicans move off the dime on taxes. Because that's part of Simpson-Bowles. I mean, Chris Christie in particular is saying, why isn't Obama embracing Simpson-Bowles? By the way, we should never raise taxes on anybody. Well, it's not Simpson-Bowles. Simpson-Bowles is raising taxes on people. So I would very much expect that if Obama was reelected and if he came up with a mandate, I think he would very much revisit that deal, probably to some chagrin of people on the left. But I think all indications are that he wants a deal like that.
Well, let me just sort of put a fine point on sort of my argument, which is that I think that all this stuff I've just sort of rehashed, at the end of the day underscores the part of the point, part of what the RNC is trying to do now, which is to say that Barack Obama is not a post-partisan transformative political figure. He is a politician, he is a liberal, and he is more than happy to go negative and to do what he needs to do to be reelected. Now, that's fine, and it's not entirely, it's certainly not abnormal. He is a politician. They are all politicians, and I think that's the point of all of this, is to say that. Well,
and this is, I think, he's a regular politician, right? That's sort of the upshot of what the line is. That don't look at him as a transported figure. Look at him as just a regular old hack politician. And look, they have every right to try to push that narrative. I guess there's a separate question I have. It seems like that RNC narrative is different than what the American Crossroads narrative is going to be, at least what was suggested in the New York Times piece that previewed the American Crossroads is the Karl Rove super PAC, and they are reportedly going to put in as much as $200 million into ads. And they seem to suggest that their polling argues for a he's in over his head type of narrative. He doesn't know what to do about the economy. This is beyond his skill set, and this is sort of a Jimmy Carter-esque narrative. He may be a nice guy and all, but he just doesn't know what he's doing. He doesn't understand the economy. And I feel that Romney has pursued that narrative a lot over the course of the primary. And that's a different narrative than Obama's a hypocrite, and he's failing because he's a hypocrite. Now, maybe the two are mutually exclusive. Maybe you can do both. But it did raise an eyebrow with me. Is it possible that the RNC and the Karl Rove, outside infrastructure are not fully in sync?
Yeah, I think it's entirely possible. And look, the message that we just spent the past 15 minutes talking about strikes me as something that might be more a matter of personal revenge than strategic. You know, Republicans sit back and watch Barack Obama get away with casting himself as being this, you know, savior and this great, and so they don't like that, and they're angry about it, and they want to do something about it. Well, that may or may not be smart strategy. It might feel good, and I wonder if there's polling to show that, you know, I'm probably more inclined to believe that Karl Rove has done the polling.
Well, I imagine this. I would not be shocked. I mean, I don't ever felt that all of the votes for Barack Obama in 2008 were all under the perception that Obama is a rock star that walks on water. I think there's a base that feels that way about him. By the folks in the middle there, and I don't know exactly what the percentage would be, who were folks who are saying, man, these last 8 years have sucked, and you're different, I'll give you a shot.
Well, I think there are a lot of, you know, if you're fighting over, say, like, all these young people who came out, you know, very quixotic and wide-eyed and came out to vote for Obama. I mean, presumably the more you can muddy him up, the more you can bring him back to earth, the less excited they're going to be, the lower their turnout. So in a way, it would sort of suppress turnout of the sort of quixotic youth by muddying him up and making him essentially like a regular Democratic politician, as opposed to this, you know, transformative figure.
And I would say none of this is high-minded campaigning either. By the way.
No,
This is all trying to attack a guy's character.
No, you're totally right. I don't deny that one bit. But again, I think that the issue is the hypocrisy. It's like, you know, he went around saying, well, if you don't have big ideas, you go negative. You talk about little things. I mean, he can't have it both ways.
Well, I think you can have it both ways if you talk about big ideas yourself. You can talk about big ideas in one part of your speech and throw an elbow to the other guy in the other part of your speech.
Right, but he was saying that Republicans pick on little things like Reverend Wright, for example, because they don't have big ideas. And if they had big ideas, they wouldn't be playing small ball.
Well, that was a line he said in 2008. You know, I mean, that was referencing the McCain campaign. Right. I don't know yet if he's going to accuse the Romney campaign of not having big ideas. His speech last week was to say Romney has this big idea and it's awful.
Yeah, but I think
his embrace of the Ryan budget is a bad idea, which is a different attack.
Well, but if it's fair for Obama to say John McCain played small ball because he didn't have big ideas, it's fair for Romney or the RNC to say, well, according to Obama's own standard, these trivial little things must be because he doesn't have big ideas. Otherwise, he wouldn't be talking about skinny jeans or whatever.
Well, that's what they're saying. And look, they have every right to try to make the case. All I'm saying is it's not. So on one hand, they're saying if I pick out the elbows that Obama throws, I can make people think he doesn't really have big ideas. And what I'm suggesting is if Obama's also talking about big ideas and people hear that, they hear him talking about clean energy still. They hear him talking about immigration reform. They hear him talking about solving our budget problems, through tax reform. They hear him talking about what he's done with health care and what he wants with infrastructure. These are all big ideas. So it's going to be I think it's going to be hard to make the case that he's not on that lane at all, because people are going to hear that part of the campaign too.
Right, but let me make this point. The RNC, they don't expect this to happen. They don't expect somebody to intellectually say, well, I liked Obama last time, but clearly because of the ads I'm seeing, Obama is a hypocrite and he is not. That's not going to happen. What they want is a visceral sort of thing where when you see Obama, you don't know why, but all of a sudden now you think of Obama as just a regular politician. You don't know why you do, but you just do. And of course, that's
going for a gut sense of the guy's character.
Yeah, so they're basically trying to tear him back down to earth. So to speak.
And look, I'm quite sure there is evidence out there that there is a degree of disappointment that things aren't as great as you might have hoped they would be by electing someone of a historic nature like this. And I'm sure the Republican Party feels like, hey, if people don't feel like they are, trashing history by turning him out,
right,
that's going to make it easier for Romney to make the case. So I totally get why you want to do it. And I'm not saying it's out of bounds to try.
The Hillary Clinton speech. Remember, she sort of mocked this. So it was something to the effect of, if you elect Obama, the skies will clear, the sun will go. Which is very, that's
I expect that clip to show up in an ad sooner or later.
It's going to, I'm sure. But this is
they
basically
every right to try to make the case. I'm just suggesting that I don't think it's while I see some some seeds of how you could make the case. I don't think it's that clean a shot.
Yeah, but again, the goal is not for people to intellectually agree. It's for them to, for whatever reason, not like Obama quite as much. That's the goal.
I guess what we don't totally know yet. Is the country fundamentally rooting for Obama or fundamentally disappointed with Obama? Obviously, few are going to say everything is just peachy keen and on a glide path. But do you feel like if you feel like we've turned the corner, things are better than what they were, and I like the direction that we're going in, I feel like he's doing the best he can under tough circumstances, you're rooting for the guy. If you feel like, I thought this guy was going to be the silver bullet, and he wasn't the silver bullet, he's just like everybody else, so screw that guy, then Obama's got a bigger problem.
I think this is going to be an incredibly negative campaign, and we disagree, but I think it's going to be because we've just spent the past half hour talking about Obama's propensity and willingness to go negative and to play small ball. Well, guess what? Mitt Romney won his primary by destroying everybody else, and I would argue Obama is more likable in terms of personality. And he's the incumbent, so he's the champion. It's his race to lose. So as much as Obama likes going negative and has proven that he's more than happy to do it and has the money to do it, Romney has to do it even more, arguably. So, I think it's in everybody's incentive to Obama wants you to think Mitt Romney's weird and out of touch, and Romney wants you to think Obama's out of touch and maybe evil. Well,
they both have out-of-touch cards they want to play.
Right.
But, I guess I do push back on the notion this is someone going to be uniquely, unprecedentedly negative. And it's going to just completely squeeze any issues discussion whatsoever. There's always tough parts of campaigns. I don't necessarily see why this would automatically be worse than Bush-Gore, worse than Bush-Dukakis, worse than Nixon-McGovern, worse than Johnson-Goldwater. People have always played rough on the campaign front. But I think the question is, are we going to have a campaign that's just drowning in attacks, and we're being forced to choose between who do we hate the most?
Yeah.
Or are we going to have some debate, or more than some? We're being asked to choose between two ideological visions for the country, and I think it's actually very probable that the choice is going to not be based primarily on who do you hate the most, but it's going to be do you want a government that is actively trying to solve national problems, or do you want a government that gets out of the way so the private sector can solve these things on their own? And so far, I see both campaigns trying to make these broader ideological points and investing a fair amount of political capital in making those points.
Well, I think you make a good point. Everybody says this is the most important race, and they're always wrong. It's always the most important race, and I think that the notion that this is going to be the most negative race in history is almost assuredly wrong. But I do think it's going to be very negative, and I think that's probably because it's going to lack a positive rationale. So, in '84, Reagan had Morning Again in America. In 2000, Bush had compassionate conservatism. Obama in 2008, hope and change. I don't see any real proactive message, positive message. I do think both campaigns, every campaign, you're right, every campaign is a hybrid of positive and negative. Positive things about me, negative things about them. But I feel like this time there's no compelling positive reason for either of these guys. That by far the best card both have is to disqualify the other. That's my gut on this.
Do you want to leave on that note, or do you want to talk about the National Review stuff?
I think we probably should leave it on that note.
Okay.
So
I don't have that much to say about National Review anyway, but
yeah.
except to say I think they did the right thing.
Yeah, me too. So, all right, man. Well, a lively debate, and I think we.
But we're still in the DMZ. It's still pleasant.
Still the DMZ. So
we've stayed within the bounds. We've not crossed the boundaries.
I think this is about as nasty as it gets. If only the Obama and Romney could learn something from this show. I'm just saying. How about a weekly dialogue here between the two candidates?
I'm sure they would be eager to take it on.
I would voluntarily give up my time at this microphone to Mitt Romney if President Obama would fill in for you, and they could come into the DMZ.
If only your party nominated Newt Gingrich, then we could have had these 15 Lincoln Douglas debates, and one of them could have been here.
Oh, Gingrich would have been all over this. This would have been perfect for him. So, all right, man. Good talking to you.
You too, sir.
And we'll see you next week.
I guess we'll catch you back in the DMZ.
That's right. Next week and we got to work on this. And by the way, theme songs. Come up, maybe suggest some.
Theme song, intro, sign-offs. We haven't mastered that stuff yet.
We would love a good theme song. All right. Thanks, Bill.
Take care.